We rode almost everywhere we went riding bareback, and we didn't, I didn't have a saddle that would fit me. All the saddles were adult saddles, but they had a strap on the outside of the stirrup leather that ran down under the stirrup. I couldn't even reach the stirrups sitting in the saddle. My feet were way too short, but it had this leather strap that I could put my foot in above the stirrup, and that's the way I rode the saddle. Well, Dad had told us that if you want to use a saddle, you've got to saddle your horse. Now, Booger is my horse, and he's over 16 hands tall. I'm tall enough I can almost reach halfway up on his body. And how in the world am I going to saddle him? So these big heavy saddles, we had a barn that had a hayloft on top of it, and in the floor of the hayloft, there was a knot hole that was about 2.5 inches in diameter. And then there was another knot hole a little ways away that rope would fit in. I got up there and I threaded a rope through the one knot, the big knot hole, put the loop down through that, and put the end of the rope down through the other one. I went down through the alleyway there, and I hooked the loop of the rope onto the horn of the saddle, and I get a hold of the other end of the rope, and I pull the rope up so it's up in the air. And I go over to the side of the alleyway, and I tied it off on the ladder that took me up to the loft. And then I went and got Booger. And I led him up under the saddle and positioned him as best I could. Went over and I turned the rope loose. Well, of course he moved. The saddle fell on the floor. Well, I went over and I pulled the saddle back up so it was above him. I led him back in there and told him, now you stand there. He didn't pay much attention to me. But nevertheless, after about the 7th or 8th try, I got the saddle on him. I could get the cinch underneath, and to cinch it up, you run the latigo through a loop on the saddle and through the end of the girth, and then you pull it tight. Well, to pull it tight, I had pulled it as tight as I could standing on the ground. I put my feet against his belly, one on each side of that cinch, and so I'm hanging in the air, pushing with my feet to tighten the girth. But that's how I got him saddled. Took me long enough to get him saddled that I didn't have any time left to ride. Mom called from the house for dinner, and I had to unsaddle him and put him away. So I didn't ride a saddle for a number of days after that, but that was an experience that in saddling a horse that some of my children have had. If you want to ride a saddle, you put the saddle on the horse.